All right, we're just waiting for a few people to get on here. And we are now live, so I would like to open the Water and Wastewater Committee meeting. We need a call to order here. So do we have any disclosures of pecuniary interest from the board? Okay, none being seen. Can we get the adoption of the minutes, please? Okay, Councillor Akpata and Councillor Auricchio Spagnuolo, all in favor? And that carries, thank you. Okay, so we have some reports to look at tonight. We'll start with the first one. This is the external audit report. And Ms. Petros, would you like to take that?
Just 1 second. I had it open and I can't find it anymore. The agenda, just 1 second. Oh, there it is. Good evening, everyone. So this report is for, it's to comply with the Reg 170 requirement for the town that we have to hire external auditor every year to conduct an audit of our distribution system. And as you can see in the report, the last audit that we had, there was no findings, only opportunities for improvements, and those have been already addressed. And if you have any questions regarding the report, please feel free to go ahead.
And does anyone have any questions on the report? No, I mean, it looks good. It's always nice to see a nice clean report with very little to talk about. So thank you, Lena. Can we get a mover to receive? Councillor Auricchio Spagnuolo and Councillor Desjardins. All in favor? And that carries, thank you. So that was the external. Now let's take a look at the internal report. Back to Ms. Petros.
So the internal report is, it's pretty much the same process. We have the choice, either we do the internal audit ourselves or we would hire someone. So we've chosen to hire Aqua to have a look at it, because it's always good to have someone from outside the organization to have a look at the at our system and point out if there is any findings or weak points where we can improve. And this was conducted end of last year as well. And as you can see in the report as well, there was no findings, 3 or 5 opportunities for improvements that have been addressed as well. Is there any questions?
No questions of the board? Okay, so with that, we will look for a mover and a seconder. Mayor Bondi, is that a question or would you like to move? Okay, Councillor Carrick will second. All in favor? And that carries, thank you. All right, so a little switch over. For this report, we'll go over to our Director of Finance and talk about water rates in some of these new buildings that we're building.
So this here's a report to take a look at revising the construction, the rates during the construction period for multi-level condos that are being built. So it's a little bit of history. When we took over our utility billing internally in 2016, we created a water policy. And at that point in time, there really wasn't much construction occurring for condos around town. So we really didn't happen to think of the situation that we're currently in. And basically what happens right now is as soon as a property is connected to the water system, they begin receiving water and wastewater bills. And they're on those bills for each property, whether it's a single unit or multi-res unit or a condo with 50 to 100 different individual units. Each unit receives a capital replacement charge for both water and wastewater, as well as a construction rate. And that's because the water meter isn't installed at that point in time. There's just a flat rate of $50 or $40 that's charged. It might be a little bit more depending on the size the pipe. But that's per unit. So the circumstance that we're in right now, and we've received some comments from some of the developers that are developing or constructing the condo units. Right off the bat, so even sometimes before a foundation is poured or before the building actually goes up, if, for example, in the report, an 80-unit building to be constructed, right off the bat, they start receiving charges for each individual unit, even though they aren't constructed at that point in time, and they really aren't using that amount of water. So for an 80-unit condo, the water bill could be over $5,000 a month when there really isn't much water being used. The actual building isn't constructed. We've had a circumstance where after receiving a bill, one of the companies that's constructing the building asked to have their water turned off just so they could find water elsewhere for the time being because they aren't using that much. So our Director of Public Works, or our Deputy CAO, sorry, and Ms. Petros and I were kind of brainstorming solution to this problem or situation. And we came up with the idea of some flat fees as soon as the connection happens, regardless of the number of units, a $200 per month charge for both water and wastewater. So that'd be a total of $400 a month, up until the point that the mechanical room's insulated. So that's when the building's up and it's beginning to be constructed and getting closer to having the interior worked on. So at that point in time, our building department would notify Ms. Petro, meter would be installed. And then from that point on, Ms. Petros would notify our supervisor of revenue, and we'd begin charging just how we normally would. The units would be metered, so there'd be charges for actual water uses and the fixed charges each month. And then also we're proposing a $25,000 security deposit, and that would be returned once the water meters installed. So that's another incentive for the developer to get the water meter installed. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Councillor Carrick?
Yes, just a couple quick ones. So when do they have access to water, and how do they get access to the water? Is it right after the connection, before the meters are put in? How do they access the water, and what timing is that?
The water is accessed through the system. It just doesn't run through a meter. So there's no way of tracking exactly how much water is being used until the meter's installed. That's why a block construction, a fixed construction rate's charged for usage until the meter's installed.
So we couldn't tell how much water is being used. Let's just say pie in the sky, somebody pulls up with a tractor and a sprayer, and they fill up the sprayer full of water, hundreds and hundreds of gallons. They drive away, they come back tomorrow, do the same thing. Would we have any way of knowing that that's what's actually being used?
Well, actually, with the new system that we're implementing, Lena and Peter might be able to answer this a little bit better than myself, but the new tracking system, I think it's through Census, it can track abnormal usage patterns. So that may be a way that we could track if someone's taking advantage and filling up different barrels of water.
Yeah, Councillor Carrick, certainly water becomes available to the properties as soon as they finalize the connection. They typically bring it in under the footings and foundations well before they start pouring any of that stuff. And typically they will put a 2-inch service off the end of the pipe, because typically it's a 6-inch pipe that comes up into the mechanical room for these bigger buildings. So that water becomes available to them right when it's finalized and installed, and it passes all the chlorination components that are required to ensure that we can turn it on. Certainly, we do not have a mechanism that if this developer continuously has farmers come in and fill up sprayers, we do not have a mechanism to support that. But I'm sure I'm going to get phone calls about these trailers constantly roaming around the town center here about filling up with water and stuff like that. So we would have to get back to them. I don't think that is an abusive type of thing, but certainly if they become abusive in that aspect, then we will demand the water meter get installed to start to curb some of that stuff. And that's really where at the agreement stage is where we'll ask for that security deposit and ensure that meter gets installed somehow or another. Certainly $25,000 is a hefty price to pay. Again, the meters might be $4,000 or $5,000 and about another couple thousand to install it. So it's probably 3 times the amount, but certainly there needs to be an incentive to get the meter in prior to occupancy occurring and things of that nature so that we can properly account for the water.
So just one more follow-up then, just so I understand the process, because I never built a condo before a building. So when you put the water in, let's say there's a leak and water gets out or whatever, and depends on how it works. Can we track, do we get billed? Is there a amount that gets to before that gets that connection that we can be billed for, or is it accounted for type thing outside of a meter?
Again, a leak in the system, if it is in any system, if it's before the meter, we'll never detect it. So we'll never find that. So what we do annually, and you'll see it, I think, as part of the summary report. If it's not part of the summary report, we talk about water losses and things of that nature. That's where that type of stuff occurs. After a meter is installed, and if there's a leak occurring after the meter, yes, we will start to know that, and that we will collect the revenue for that lost water. At that point, we have another policy that deals with how that kind of adjustment occurs if that is discovered last minute. But certainly within our system itself, any water main break that occurs within the system, that's considered lost water because it's not accounted for from a revenue standpoint. But we're being charged for it from that standpoint through the Windsor Utilities meter.
Okay, thanks. It seems pretty fair to me.
Councillor Charlotte.
Thank you. Through you. I'm just curious, other municipalities must have run into scenarios like this. Are we in a comparable situation with what we've decided to do?
I think we confirmed with a few municipalities, and I don't think a lot of them have this boom that we're experiencing with respect to multi-res. Ms. Petros, maybe you have a bit more information on that because you did that homework.
I reached out to our neighboring municipalities our size and to ask them to see if they have any policy or system in place. Most of them have not experienced that many multi-res in their profession, so they haven't. But they're like more like when I explained how we do it, and they're thinking about basically following suit. So even for residential small services, some of them don't even charge anything. But they're like, we don't even recoup our money. So they're thinking about following something similar process to what we have.
Okay.
None of them had anything similar.
Okay. So, thank you. So I guess once again, we're kind of leading the pack, right? We're putting out the good guidelines for everybody to use. Thank you.
Correct.
Okay, Mayor Bondi.
Chair, through you to either Peter or Lena. Having gone through construction, I know there's a block rate for residential. Do you feel 200 for multi-res with all the mortar cement they'll be using is sufficient to cover our cost? I'm assuming you've done your homework in that regard. So just wondered if you think 200, because if they're building a 5-story building with 40 units, that's a lot of time under construction. Just your thoughts on that?
Certainly, we had to take a guess at what is going to be used. Even on a residential, I'm not sure that $40 captures anything on a residential side as well. So we're trying to come up with a bit of a balance. Again, Mr. Langlois has brought up that this was brought to our attention by one of the developers. And in reviewing this proposal tonight, before you tonight, I did have a chance to circle back with them and let them know that this was coming before the committee, and they were appreciative and they think that that is a fair dollar value. It's tough to say if it's going to be formally covering all of our costs, but certainly as the building continues to get finished again, they need to get the exterior on before they can finish the interior and doing some of the insulation. So we hope that at some point when that mechanical room becomes insulated is when we start to ask for the meter to get installed. And as we get towards the end of the construction, where that may be finishing units for tiling and mortar and drywall and things of that nature, that we will start to capture those costs, because at that point the meter should be installed. So I don't think it's going to capture everything, but certainly it will give us a good chance of at least keeping up with what is happening on a larger residential multi-unit building.
Further, just curious, is there such thing as a flow meter where we don't need a water meter, but just a meter that will judge the amount of water flowing through that? Just a thought.
Yeah, there are such things as they call them strap-on meters, where you can just strap it on the outside of the pipe and it does detect. They're not very accurate. They have, technology has changed with respect to that. The problem with it is similar to, and why we don't install the meters, because it's still going to freeze, and that's really the reason why we're doing this and delaying the meter install is for the buildings that carry on through the winter. Again, we have two that are currently under construction, that were under construction from the fall of last year, and certainly if we had those types of meters on there, we would have probably experienced issues with respect to having to either broken meters or things of that nature. So that's why it's a bit of a chicken and egg thing here, that we have to kind of work through that process of what we want to do in the meter with respect to the timing and construction, and also the weather that we have to deal with.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, do we have any other questions? So I just had one, and I know we've kind of touched on it in a couple different ways here, but Peter, could you just give us an idea of a timeline, how this works? So basically they start building the building, the cement floor goes in, and the water line goes in at that point. And how many months are we talking typically do we see between the water going in and the meter getting installed?
So the water is probably the third thing that gets installed when a building gets started. Again, they start deepest to the shallowest, and so they will come in and do sanitary servicing, they'll do storm servicing of the site, and then they'll bring in the water main. Then they start to build the building. So again, the water, all those services have to come in under footings and foundations. So they want to get those in before they start to pour any of those other aspects. So at that point in time, so within probably the first month or so is when the water starts to become available for them. Now it takes a bit of time, probably, again, it could take anywhere from 6 to 8 months before you start to get up to your final floors in elevation with respect to multi-res and multi-floor buildings. Again, I'm looking at the two that we currently have under construction. It's probably been about 6 to 8 months. They're just approaching the upper floors now. Again, that was through the winter, so it was a bit slower construction, and through COVID as well. So that kind of slowed them down. So we're talking probably about 6 to 8 months. I would say maybe going on to about 10 months where this would be in place before we could actually start to demand a meter be installed and have a mechanical room that provides that adequate protection.
Okay, thank you. And I think that's it. My other questions were actually already answered. So one last thing for Dale. Dale, this isn't going to affect the municipality in general for rates. This loss of extra revenue is not going to put anybody else's bill up. Would that be fair to say?
That's fair. It's only for a period of time. And then once the units are in and the meters are in, it's billing as usual. So it's just reducing just for a short period of time from the connection to the point that the mechanical room's insulated. So, and even if we continued on the way we were doing, we'd probably have more contractors that are building the multi-res units probably at $5,000 a month. There'd be more asking to have their water shut off and to get it elsewhere, I'd imagine, because that's already happened. So really, I don't think there's going to be a big financial impact.
Okay. Thank you very much. Seeing no other comments or questions, I need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Akpata, seconded by Mayor Bondi. All those in favor? And that carries. Thank you. So our final report is a summary report for 2020, our big COVID year. Is that Ms. Petros, will you be taking that one as well?
Yes.
Okay.
So the summary report is an annual report that the operations of water distribution we provide to members of council, and this summarizes all the activities from all the sampling and testing, treatment equipment that we don't treat here at the LaSalle distribution. We only distribute water and we purchase everything from Enwin. It talks about number of samples that we conduct every year to meet the minimum requirements, and chemical sampling and testing. If there is also any adverse test results, that in 2020 we had no adverse test results in our system, and there was no corrective actions. Also, it goes through the monthly consumption and the maximum daily flow, which we don't have available because of the way our system is run. If there is any questions regarding the report, I'll be happy to answer.
Have any questions on the report tonight? Okay, none being noted. We'll get a mover and a seconder. We'll get moved by Councillor Richo Spagnolo and seconded by Deputy Mayor Malash. All those in favor? And that carries. Thank you. So we have our next meeting as May 25th, which would be the Tuesday after May 24th. So hopefully we're all in good spirits for that next meeting. And if there are no other comments today, we will adjourn this meeting so that we can come back at 6 p.m. for the real